You know, for 66 million years, this has been the coldest case on the planet. I mean, an entire world of giants just vanished. It's wild. So today, we're going to put on our detective hats and see if we can finally crack the case of what really killed the dinosaurs. Right, so the story that most of us grew up with was this tale of a slow, sad decline. You know, the dinosaurs were already fading away, and this cosmic accident just sort of put them out of their misery. But what if that's not what happened at all? New evidence is flipping that entire narrative on its head, suggesting the dinosaurs didn't go out with a whimper, but with a very, very big bang. All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to investigate the dinosaurs' health right before everything went down. Then, we'll identify our prime suspect. After that, we'll visit the actual crime scene, meet the unlikely survivors, and then we'll uncover a final twist that might just blow your mind. Okay, let's get right into it. The central debate here is huge. For years, the main theory was that the dinosaurs were already in serious trouble. But is that really true? Let's look at the evidence for both sides. So, in one corner, you've got the classic slow decline theory. This is the idea that stuff like volcanic activity and climate change, how the dinosaurs on a one-way trip to extinction anyway. But in the other corner, we have this much more dramatic thriving theory, which argues that actually the dinosaurs were at the absolute top of their game when disaster struck out of nowhere. So what changed? Why the new theory? Well, paleontologists have been digging up some stunning new clues, buried in rocks that date to the final moments of the dinosaur age. And these aren't just any old bones. They're like these incredible snapshots of life right before the lights went out. For example, down in New Mexico, we found a whole diverse group of fossils, including giants like the 100-foot-long Alamosaurus, that show they were doing just fine only 350,000 years before the impact. Then, get this. In Montana, a team found a Triceratops horn just 5 inches below the layer of rock that marks the extinction event. 5 inches. This single fossil completely shatters this old idea of a 3-meter gap, which was this supposed fossil-free zone that made it seem like the dinosaurs had already died out. And as Professor Steve Brusette, who worked on that New Mexico study, puts it, there's just no evidence they were in trouble. It really looks like they were thriving with all kinds of diverse species filling every corner of North America, right up until the very end. So if the dinosaurs weren't already on their way out, that points the finger directly at a single catastrophic event. It means we have a prime suspect for their sudden disappearance, a killer from outer space. Now let's talk about the sheer scale of this thing. This is the Cretaceous-Paleogene Extinction Event, or KPG for short. We're talking about a rock 6 miles wide, slamming into the planet with the force of billions of nuclear bombs. It's almost unimaginable. And the impact didn't just kill the dinosaurs, it wiped out 3/4 of all life on Earth. And the devastation was practically instant. Within just 10 minutes of impact, massive earthquakes were shaking the entire globe. Within an hour, superheated debris rained back down, literally broiling the planet's surface. And for anything that survived that, a brutal impact winter plunged the world into darkness and cold for years. The key takeaway here is that this wasn't a slow process. It was a full-blown apocalypse in a day. You know, for decades, we could only imagine what that day was like. But then, paleontologists uncovered something absolutely extraordinary, a fossil site that captured the minutes, even the hours, right after the impact, a perfectly preserved crime scene. Welcome to the Tanis Fossil Site in North Dakota. We're nearly 2,000 miles away from the impact crater in Mexico. On that day, 66 million years ago, this was just a peaceful, quiet river system. But it was about to be hit by a disaster that traveled not through the air or even the ocean, but through the very crust of the Earth itself. Okay, let's break this down because it's wild. The impact created a seismic shockwave so powerful it was like a magnitude 11 earthquake. Those waves ripped through the planet's crust and arrived in North Dakota in a matter of minutes. They violently shook this huge inland sea that covered the middle of America, creating what's called a seiche. It's like a giant sloshing wave in a bathtub that stood over 300 feet high. This wasn't a tsunami that took hours to arrive. It was an almost immediate wall of water that roared up that river, burying everything in its path in an instant. And the fossils they found here, wow, they are just unbelievable. They found fish that were literally still breathing as tiny glass beads of melted rock from the impact rained down and clogged their gills. They found a turtle impaled by a branch, a mummified dinosaur with its skin intact,
They can even tell it was springtime based on the fish bones. It is a mass grave that tells the story of the very first hour of the extinction. It's chilling. So, with this level of absolute global devastation, you have to wonder, how did anything survive? And more specifically, how did one group of dinosaurs, the ancestors of modern birds, manage to make it through when all their giant relatives perished? Well, turns out that at the end of the Cretaceous, not all birds were created equal. You had these ancient birds with teeth, perfect for snatching bugs or small animals. And then you had the ancestors of the birds we see today, who had a new piece of tech, a toothless beak. Now, in a thriving world, both were doing just fine. But when that impact winter wiped the slate clean and the whole food chain collapsed, those specialized toothed hunters had nothing to eat. They starved. But the beaked birds had an ace up their sleeve. And that ace was the humble beak. It wasn't just for chirping. A strong beak, combined with a powerful gizzard that could grind up tough stuff, was the perfect tool for cracking open the one food source left in abundance in a barren, post-apocalyptic world: seeds. I mean, think about it. While forests were burning and plants were withering in the dark, seeds could just lie dormant in the soil for years, waiting. They were like a global, long-lasting emergency food supply, and the ability to find, crack open, and digest these tiny, tough little packages of life was the difference between making it and going extinct. It was the ticket that got beaked birds through the darkest of times, allowing them to survive and eventually inherit the skies. So, okay, we have our cause of death, a sudden, catastrophic asteroid impact, and we know how the avian dinosaurs survived, but our investigation isn't over. There is one final, mind-bending twist. The case of the dinosaurs is actually far from closed. Hey, remember that old slow decline theory from the beginning? It was based on finding fewer and fewer dinosaur species in the rock layers leading up to the extinction. But what if that wasn't because there were fewer dinosaurs? What if it's just because we haven't been looking in enough places? And this is the part that gets me. A major statistical study came to a truly staggering conclusion. Based on our rate of discovery, they estimate that we have only found about 29% of all the major groups of dinosaurs that ever existed. That means over 70% of them are still out there, buried, waiting to be found. And this chart just puts that gap into perfect perspective. Right now, we recognize around 527 valid groups, or genera, of dinosaurs, but the total estimated number is almost 1,850. The reason we see what looks like a decline in the late Cretaceous is probably just because rock layers from that specific time are harder to find, which creates a huge bias in the fossil record. The dinosaurs weren't disappearing. Our view of them was just getting smaller. And that leaves us with this final, amazing question. The story of the dinosaurs isn't just about a dramatic end. It's about a whole undiscovered world, a lost diversity that we are only just beginning to wrap our heads around. So maybe the greatest mystery isn't just how they died, but how much more there is still left for us to discover.